move to the almost 1.5 million.
Right.
And then for 2019, 2020, we're just over 1.7 million. So we're realizing an increase of right around $200,000 each year.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Heidi, currently, are any of the programs delivered by our partner agencies, is there any volunteer contribution from individuals in those programs, like without dollars being expended?
Mr. Chair, if I could just clarify, is the question through the use of volunteers?
Right. Are volunteers associated with the other agencies? Like we're replacing that, right? So has there been a component of volunteerism in the delivery of the former agency programs?
Mr. Chair, through to Councillor Columbus, no, I'm not aware of any.
Okay, thank you.
Finished, Councillor Columbus? Sorry about that. Councillor Black?
I didn't see any other hands. You were looking for a motion?
That's just what I was checking with the clerk. What's our direction? Yes.
I'd
She
be
has informed me
prepared
that's-
to move the recommendation in the staff report. Not sure which one it is here, but whichever the right one is, that's the one I'd like to move.
Staff would, what direction, what motion are you looking for and what page so that we can?
Yeah, well, it's always confuses me, the recommendation of Health Social Services, and then the recommendation below, and then there's something else moved by yourself, so I'm not sure which one it is.
So you're looking for the one on page 19?
Page 19? Yes. Yes.
Is that the one you're looking for?
Mr. Chair, yes, it's the recommendation that is on the first page of the report, directly below the recommendation of the advisory committee.
And that's the one that I wanted to move.
And Councillor Oliver.
You have to have a motion before you can do an amendment.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor that's been moved and seconded, and if you have something that you need to do, you can do it after we get the motion on the floor. Okay. So the motion is on the floor right now as it is printed on page 19. It has been moved and it has been seconded. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here is what I would like to propose as an amendment, if I can get a seconder for my amendment. In the third paragraph of the motion, the wording would be as follows: and further that council approves the addition of up to 8 FTEs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end of that paragraph, the following words would be added. In other words, phased into the division by the end of the 2018-2019 fiscal year, with annual reporting to council to confirm continued 100% provincial funding and budget apportionment for staffing and client support. I don't know how else to word the client support part. In other words, we want what the clients get, if you like, in terms of beds, or other supports for first and last month rent. Those kinds of things are what I'm lumping as client support. That we would continue to receive an annual report of that. I can read it again if the deputy clerk would like it. The first part is easy, up to 8 FTEs.
Yes.
At the end of that same paragraph, comma, with annual reporting to council to confirm continued 100% provincial funding.
Wait a minute now. You all right? Okay.
And budget apportionment for staffing and client support.
I don't get that part.
Pardon?
I don't get that last part.
And budget?
Budget apportionment for staffing and client support. What I mean by that, I don't know whether you'll let me speak to it unless
Yes.
I can get a seconder.
Budgets.
A budget portion for,
Apportionment, Mr. Chairman,
yeah, apportionment.
for staffing and client support, two separate items.
All right, go ahead. I
Well,
think you've been
all I'm
asked-
really saying, Mr. Chairman, and I think I saw staff kind of nodding that they could do that. We talked earlier this evening about the amount of money in this total allocation of 1.489 million, perhaps in 2018, 2019, that is going to cover the cost of these new positions that we're potentially creating, and that's going to provide the delivery of actual service supports to the clients that are out there that need emergency housing. What I personally don't want to see happen is the apportionment of that pie start to shift too much in favor of more staffing costs and less in favor of what the client population is actually receiving. So I'd like to see us every year have a report given to us. Number one says it's still being funded 100% by the province. We're not slipping into having to subsidize it with the levy. And number two, that says that relative ratio of those two funding envelopes within that program have not changed.
Mr. Chairman?
Councillor Black.
Am I on here?
Yes, you are.
Hearing the explanation, as a mover, certainly we support that and would be willing to receive it as a friendly amendment.
All right. Did you wish to speak? Was somebody over there wish to speak? Oh, okay. So we have a motion on the floor that has been moved and seconded. Speaking to the motion, Mayor Luke.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I certainly read the consultant, org code, their report that they did for this county on our CHIPPY program for Haldeman, Norfolk. It's a 25-page document. It is, I think, an excellent report. And I'd just like to quote a couple things, if I may. I'll be quick. When you look at the executive summary on page 34 of our agenda, I think this is important. Right at the beginning, off the top, it says, and I quote, "It is not often that a service manager dedicates time and resources to intentionally look inward to identify opportunities to make changes to its service orientation and programming with the goal of improving outcome for its clients." And it goes on to talk about how practices and policies can be improved to ensure outgoing service excellence for the individuals and families who rely on our housing support and homelessness prevention. The next paragraph, I'll skip to it for a second. It says, in org code's research, and I quote, "Throughout our research, one conclusion was immediately and consistently apparent. Given the impact of CHIPPY portfolio on local communities as a whole, and its influence on the success of the counties in preventing and ending homelessness," and here's the word, performance. Performance within the funded agencies is critically important, et cetera, et cetera. Councillor Sonnenberg asked Heidi Van Dyke the important question. He said, is this going to get resolved in our counties, this situation of homelessness? Will we be able to see an end to it? And on the bottom of page 34, the consultant says, "It is critical to understand that there is an immense cost to not acting to improve service orientation and implementation." And I like this line, "Promoting the health and the well-being of individuals and families is at the core of the mission to end homelessness." Promoting health and well-being of individuals and families. That's what is at the core of this mission we're on to end homelessness. The cost of doing nothing will ultimately be borne by the community. And then just to finish, Mr. Chair, they provide us with 6 direct strategic directions to follow. So they've identified the issues and they've given us 6, and these 6 strategic directions, Mr. Chair, are based on the evidence that they have collected in this report. This is I'm not here to promote the consultant, but I'll tell you, it started to make some sense to me. So, Mr. Chair, I certainly support this. And finally, on the last page in the conclusions, they warn us that these challenges and targets that are in here represent a significant challenge. And thus, we need some more hands on board, I think, because with what we've got for FTEs currently, we know, and the consultants know, it's not working. So it is going to be a challenge for our service manager and the partners in the community. To achieve them, systemic changes are needed and a realignment of current investments will be required. This is exactly what our staff is telling us has to be done. And finally, many different organizations will be called on to help as the community moves forward to implement the strategies identified here. I mean, this is good stuff, and I don't think it's just pie in the sky. I think it's solid, evidence-based ways that we can move forward. So, Mr. Chair, I certainly support, and I thank staff for this.
Any further comments? Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't be supporting this. I guess maybe if there was the option of the full-time employee versus the contract employee, I might go for it. Because what I see is we're going to hire employees to look after a program that allegedly is going to run forever. I don't necessarily see this program doing so. I'm not sure how many people are out there in Norfolk, but we have a population of 63,000, 40 in Haldeman, 100K. How many people are homeless? 3,000? Maybe, I don't know. There's no numbers in any of this report that actually speaks to that, and I understand that's why we need to pay the data analysis person so much money to compile that data, but when it's done, what do? All 3,000 get entered in the system and then they sit there waiting for somebody new with a new name to come in the system? Right now, we have a provider that we pay to do a service that we're not happy with. Shouldn't we fix that? They have 4 employees. We're looking for 8. If they had 8, I'm sure they could do a better job. Stands to reason. Maybe they're just understaffed and can't come up with the stuff that we have. But, you know, to let it go on and on, we've seen time and time again that the province funds all of this stuff. Oh, but then all of a sudden, that doesn't include training. That doesn't include car mileage. It doesn't include all the rest of this stuff, and we're going back to the taxpayers, asking them to pay something again, Mr. Chair. So, you know, I'm not going to support this. There's better ways, and working with your provider to deliver the service you expect is the better way, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Columbus.
Mr. Chairman, I will be supporting the recommendation. Currently, we find that we are short on program monitoring and not spending the dollars that were allocated by the province. There's a threat that those dollars could be taken back. And overall, the delivery service will be more accountable overall. Thank you.
Councillor Black.
Well, it's interesting how one's life changes over time, and I have been a businessman in downtown Simcoe since 1976. I had to figure it out. That's 41 years. I can't believe it. And I've seen a lot of this activity in our downtown. I've tried to support these people myself in some of my apartments, and I see a genuine need for supporting these individuals. I was happy to see that Indwell came on board with their support system. Now, adding 8 people, and I guess no one likes to add more FTEs to our complement, but it is required. It's the only way we're going to get the job done. Plus, this council did allow me and appoint me to sit on the Poverty Action Partnership for Haldeman, Norfolk, and I'm learning more and more about these individuals, their needs, and their complexities. And I agree with what the mayor has read, that, you know, some may say that just let them figure it out themselves, but I think this program and many other programs are put in place to help these individuals by helping these individuals, we help our society. We become what you call humane individuals, and we bring everyone up along with us. So it is something that's needed, required, and I'm happy to support it, and I thank staff for bringing it forward.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. All right. I believe that takes us to our next deputation. Yeah.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to invite Mr. John Harris to the podium to speak to his deputation regarding downtown revitalization program review implementation. And just a reminder, it is a strict 10 minutes.
Thank you. First, before I started on my comments here, I wanted to say that I recently had the opportunity to attend the Waterford consultation that you had on the recreational facilities. I thought that was exceptionally done. I think that you guys were very engaging. The public really got to have a chance to hear you guys got a chance to hear them out. I thought you did an extraordinary job. Recently, we have learned the shocking news that Norfolk's health unit has vaulted to the second highest unit reporting opioid-related deaths in the province. We're seeing an increase of crime in our downtown cores, one of our cores, that being here in Simcoe, and we're seeing the increase of the severity of the types of incidents that are happening on our streets. While the OPP is doing a good job, one cannot help but notice that there's a steady increase of the reporting of drug-related arrests. We have drug-related seizures, violence occurring within our communities. Some time ago, we started a conversation about the need for downtown revitalization within the urban cores of our communities, and tonight I rise once again to attempt to bring this back to public attention. We are presently facing a crisis. We're not the only community facing this crisis, but it's a complex issue, and many communities are having to grapple with what to do about this. However, we need a clear and definitive plan to address the reality that we are presently in. We have seen a hollowing out of our urban centers. We have seen, and we are presently seeing, businesses close up and leave. We have seen limited investment and continuing decay. We had an initiative that began and was moving forward, and a local group that represents businesses wanted to lead the way, and they stepped in to provide that leadership. However, it seems that attempt has faced some sort of barrier. There are complications, and we find ourselves stalled, and we are waiting once again. In the situation we face, we simply can't afford to wait until they come back with an update, and we can't wait till they find their feet again. The crisis we face requires that we lead on many fronts, and this issue touches directly on the downtown, which we're in now, and all you need to do is simply look outside to see the need that is out there. So I ask tonight if you would consider bringing the issue of downtown revitalization of the communities within our county back to this table for consideration. We can't afford to wait any longer. We simply must start to address the elements that are continuing to deepen the crisis that we're in, or it will continue to deepen. Being here tonight, listening to the housing piece that just happened, it enheartens me as someone who's a member of the community that fights for children and fights for families, that is joining with the other people who are fighting against the scourge of poverty, the effects of mental health and addiction, to listen to your manager speak in the vision that she casts. That gives me great hope that there are a lot of partners out there that we can connect with. This is one opportunity where we can begin to try and build some more partnerships and some more bridges. So the question I asked you is simple. Can council please bring the issue of downtown revitalization back for further consideration and possibly a renewed approach? That's it.
Councillor Black.
Couldn't agree with you more, John. And thank you for coming and bringing it back to the table. I've always thought that maybe one of the answers, because we've tried different things, would be to complete a downtown secondary plan. And we've had that funding put in place in our budgets for many years now, but council decided to take it out. I just wondered what your thoughts might be on the some of the positive aspects of implementing a downtown secondary plan. I think what you said, and I've made a note of it, we need a plan. And I think this is something that council could do and would bring some of those issues forward. so we can plan for them. Wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
One of the things that I find, so you started this initiative a while ago. People were coming to the table to want to participate in this conversation. I think that's good. It got stalled, and now, quite candidly, we don't know where we are. I think that realities on the ground have shifted, and there is a crisis that's occurring within the community on many fronts. I think a part was we need to reflect, and what does that mean for us? The work that partners in the communities are doing are absolutely essential, and this is not just simply, you touch on an issue like downtown revitalization, we've got the thing answered. There are health issues, there are mobility issues. In other work I do in the community, there are issues that we have to bring to the table to help to address issues. The most important thing, I think, is, yes, talking about these issues, and I'm willing, absolutely willing, to do anything I can to help on this front. We need to start to get those partners to the table. We need to start to break down some of those silos. You're hearing some of these pieces coming together. Do I have a definitive, this is the silver bullet? No, because there's not one there. But we need to start the question, we need to start the conversation, and it's going to take people at the health unit. It's going to have to talk about people in housing and what happens to our communities. You have to talk about addiction. You have to talk about poverty. You have to talk about pieces, yes, that don't have easy solutions, but they've been with us a long time. No one yet in our society has figured out what the cure to poverty is, but it still affects our societies. The most important thing, I think, now is we need to get it back here. We have partners in the communities that are striving every day to address these issues. And candidly, we need some leadership on this level because there are things that leadership at this level can do to start moving that ball forward that I think would be enormously helpful. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thanks, John.
Further questions? Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the deputation. Mr. Harris, you just heard our report on unaffordable apartment locations for people in town, and yet Simcoe is overrun with vacant stores. Our planning department doesn't allow apartments to be on those main floors, so basically those buildings sit empty. There's a tax rebate program. Do you feel that turning those into affordable housing units on the first floor of commercial streets would be acceptable to downtown Simcoe?
I personally think that yes, it would be an interesting opportunity that we should pursue. I think that when you start to look at other work I do, I've had to take a look at portfolios. And you look at that portfolio and you say, is this working? And if it's not working, you get into that portfolio and you say, okay, why is this here and why is that there? What you touch on here, Councillor, is a piece that, yes, I would say we should have those conversations because opening up any opportunity to bring relief and help to communities is not a bad thing.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Further questions? Seeing none, we thank you very much for your deputation. Councillor Black.
Can I receive this information? And so move.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Black, seconded by Councillor Oliver, that we receive the deputation's information. All in favor?
Yep.
Motion is carried.
Just on this issue?
If you wish.
Well, I agree with John, and I know Councillor Brunton has brought it up maybe a couple of weeks ago where we're at with the South Coast Coalition, and I think at some point we're going to need to have something concrete come back to us. So could I ask through you once again, Chris, do you think that something would be coming back to us, whether it's just to put some finality to this, even if it's absolutely nothing? If we know it's nothing, then we know it and we can sort of move forward, because we actually do have a motion that's been in limbo by Councillor Oliver and myself that could be resurrected.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, and just in comment to your suggestion about secondary plans and so on, we've talked extensively with staff. Our friends at South Coast Business Coalition have been working together. They've gone through different ups and downs and challenges as well. I know that they're going to come forward. They'll have some ideas. I think there's changes in the wind, particularly with the local chamber and the BIA. There's opportunities there. And I've challenged my staff And I would extend it even further, that each division in this corporation has a resource that can plug into what Mr. Harris has indicated, something about downtown renewal. We all play a part of it. So I think it's about getting direction from council and getting each of the general managers and managers, those that would have play a part, to work together and develop a plan. I think that's in the very near future. And we also have, coming into the 2018 operating budget, we've put a placeholder for downtown renewal. We're not talking specifically Simcoe. I think we need to talk about all our downtowns. Some may be more hard up than others, but at least it will provide council the opportunity at budget time to discuss that. And we've got meetings through the fall, and staff are going to continue to move forward and come up with some ideas. And we would look forward to, again, the coalition and others, to the chambers, the boards of trade, BIAs, to step forward and start to put some action together. I think the time for study is past. We really need an action plan.
Can't agree more, and thank you for that, Chris. I appreciate it.
Councillor Broughton.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris, am I misunderstood perhaps, but a couple of weeks ago you said they are coming in still, the coalition group, or they are not?
I've had some discussions with a few of the member participants, and I know they want to get some closure, and they've got some ideas, whether they're plans that they're going to lay out publicly, or they may put forward some ideas for this council and staff to look at. At the end of the day, I think we all need to work together. We all have different skill sets, and come together and finally do something. I think this is the year coming up for sure.
But my question is, there's no deputation coming shortly from the coalition group?
Not that I'm specifically aware through the chair, but I know there's a desire to update not only council but the community on their efforts.
Thank you.
Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on this same matter, and I agree completely with my two colleagues' comments, and I agree with Mr. Baird, but I think, quite honestly, before we discuss a line item in our operating budget for 2018, and we all get excited and revved up about doing something ourselves as council and providing some leadership, as Mr. Harris and others originally wanted us to do, I'd like to know, and I think we all deserve to know, if the South Coast Business Coalition folks who took this upon themselves to come up with ideas, I either want to have them say, we're here and here are our ideas, or we're not coming to you with our ideas, and to know that before the end of this year, because I don't want to go into budget discussions, Mr. Chair, and still be worrying if we take some initiative to do something, 2 or 3 months later, they're going to come to us and say, well, you were supposed to let us take the lead on this, and now you've messed it up. So can we make a request through Mr. Baird that we get a definitive response from the South Coast Business Coalition as to whether they will or will not come and make a presentation to council before the end of this year? Because if they don't, that's it. We'll do it ourselves.
Okay. Just before I go to Mr. Baird to answer your question, the mayor had his hand up. Mr. Mayor, would you like to say something?
Councillor Oliver is just a step ahead of me, because you are right on the money with this. We initially, a few years ago, had a group of downtown interested people, quite a large group of people that were meeting, and from that it seemed to evolve to the South Coast Coalition and getting the consultant to put together. He had had success in Hamilton and other areas, so there was a lot of excitement, and it has, Mr. Harris is quite right, it's just kind of sort of fallen out by the wayside. So certainly I was going to suggest, certainly Mr. Baird, and I'm also willing to work with Mr. Baird to come up with some answers and ask the tough questions of what's going on, and let's get on with this. So if this isn't working, or the coalition's plans have not come to where they should, then I think it's time to bring it back to this table before the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor Oliver, if I hear you correctly, what you would like to suggest to Mr. Baird, if I understand you correctly, is that he phone the business coalition, whoever is in charge, and ask if they are coming, yes or no. Do we have agreement with council to do that? Mr. Baird, we would like you to do that, please.
Thank you very much. I will do so.
Okay. Councilor Columbus.
Well, it's been my understanding that they are planning on coming back, and because I sit at the table with the Delhi Chamber of Commerce, and it's talked about quite often, so maybe they've got some issues with their own, whoever's involved with their whole programming.
Well, Mr. Baird will get back to us.
But I think the only way that we can get revitalization in the downtown is perhaps the county is going to have to buy some of the properties. And I don't know whether that's in the cards or not, because the owners of these properties, you have to have them on side to be involved with the revitalization program. So, Mr. Baird, do you envision that some of these properties would be purchased by the county in order to revitalize the downtowns?
Through the chair, I think any good revitalization program has to start grassroots. It has to be those owners, those stakeholders that have skin in the game. I don't think it's up to the county to buy all sorts of properties and try to populate them with businesses. It's got to be a partnership. But I think the point's well taken. It's good to have this discussion. There's probably a little bit of everything that's going to be part of the solution. But I look forward to communicating with them, and we'll get some sort of response back for you.
Just to add to that, Mr. Chairman, you may recall years ago, it's probably 30 years ago at least, the town of Tillsonburg, where they actually purchased up a number of properties and built that downtown mall, which kind of re-energized the downtown community in Tillsonburg. So it's not something that's novel. It's happened before in communities.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm sure Mr. Baird will get back to us with some information. Thank you very much. That brings us to staff reports. Staff report, provincial notification of the Social Infrastructure Fund, investment in affordable housing funding allocation. Who is in charge of that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Trish Givens will present the report.
We are awaiting your magic words.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of this report, it's a quick one, is to advise Council of the additional allocation of funds for Haldimand and Norfolk counties through the Federal Social Infrastructure Fund and the Provincial Investment in Affordable Housing Program for the 2018-19 fiscal year in the amount of $478,500. This is a program that started in 2016, and we received about $1.8 million were allocated, and about $700,000 of those funds were used towards social housing capital improvements, and the remainder went towards various affordable housing programs. In the 2017-18 those funds, we will be issuing an RFP for the remaining about $800,000 through towards development of affordable housing. And the remainder of those funds will go towards administrative costs. At this point in time, because of the timing, staff are still in the process of evaluating how these funds should be used, and we'll put the recommendation together and present it to Council through the 2018 budget process. Thank you.
Questions? Seeing none. Mayor Luke?
I'll certainly move the recommendation, please.
Okay. And that recommendation is that we get more information, identify, prepare a summary, appropriate. So you're going to prepare a report and bring it back at budget time?
Mr. Chair, yes.
Okay. It has been put on the floor. Do we need a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Sonnenberg. All in favor? Good luck with your report. All right, that brings us to the next item, and that is standardizing the contractor for winter control equipment. We will change staff here. And who will be presenting this report?
That would be me, Mr.
One.
Chair.
You are on.
Through you to council. The reason I'm here tonight is to request an exemption from the purchasing policy to permit the establishment of a sole source contractor for building of our winter control equipment for a period of 5 years. Our preferred contractor is Viking Sieves Limited. Currently, we have 32 out of our 35 tandem axle snowplows have been built by them. And 5 out of 5 single axle snowplows have been built by them. The reason we're making this request is it provides additional consistency for the operation and maintenance of these trucks. All the builds that they have done for us have held up very well so far. Roads operations and fleet services staff are all pleased with the performance of the units and support the notion of essentially locking in with them for a period of 5 years. Excuse me. This approval, should you so choose, would have a vendor performance component, so to speak. So essentially, we'll continue to monitor the quality of their work through this period, as well as all the costs associated with the construction of these vehicles. Should the quality of the product decline or the building cost start to rise excessively, our intention would be that we have an out clause, so we would be able to reopen the process to the rest of the marketplace. So currently, our specifications get drafted, we issue a tender. These tenders are typically picked up by the cabin chassis manufacturers, and they basically award their business to one of these builders as a subcontractor of the unit. So in the future, if this were to be approved, we would issue basically a tender for the cabin chassis, and it would just specify that they need to deal with Viking Sieves as our contractor for the winter control equipment. That is essentially it in a nutshell, so if you have any questions, I'm here to respond.
Thank you very much. Mayor Luke.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do want to thank Jason very much. I know Leah's still away and will be back hopefully in the very near future, so I appreciate you being here. And Mr. Chair, I notice our deputy clerk is very well-mannered this evening. I'm so pleased this evening. I don't know why. And nevertheless, I do have a question, and I have to say that in asking this, I'm struggling a little bit of what you're asking here, and I guess I'm struggling with it because I don't really totally know the whole picture, and certainly when I read 5 years of this, and well, okay, I'll get to my question, Mr. Chair. Jason, through the chair, you're mentioning in this report that 37 out of 40, or 93%, of our current winter control truck fleet has been built by this provider, this company. Like, I'm not sure the magnitude, Mr. Chair, of what kind of money's involved here, because we pride ourselves in putting out tenders so that all people in the business can participate. And I know that there are exceptions, and I certainly have supported some of those, but I'm not sure that I understand the magnitude of what kind of money we would be looking at, not just in perhaps one tender, because I know it could be 20,000, 10, I don't know. But in total, through the chair, and maybe Jason, you can't answer this, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Do you have any idea over the next 5 years how much money we're talking here in the way of tender value?
Through the chair to the mayor. Generally speaking, I've been informed that the winter control component of one of these builds is about a third of the total cost of one of these vehicles. Now, that being said, we currently have one approved capital project. Magnitude's hard to really pinpoint, considering that we will be bringing forward a request in the 2018 capital for 2 more units to be replaced. So ultimately, the value will be directly reflected by whether or not those units get approved for replacement. But over a 5-year period, say if you went with one a year, it would probably be, I would guess, in the magnitude of about $240,000 over the course of those years.
Okay, and certainly when you mentioned 1/3 of the total cost, I sort of get that, because adding on to new equipment, modifying or doing certain things is, well, special work. It's not cheap, so I get that. So my last question is, if I get this straight, it says in here on the first page that this company manufactures and installs equipment. So they are manufacturing the equipment that would be an add-on to, let's say, a truck that we purchased, correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
So, Mr. Chair, just if I may continue, so regardless when we put out a tender for a new dump truck or a new truck that needs a plow put on it or whatever, it doesn't matter which company supplies the truck, whether it's, whatever company, you're asking us to have all of the add-ons, if I can call that, the modifications, the add-on equipment, you're asking that the add-ons only be considered by one company and one company only.
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. Essentially, we'd be looking at the cabin chassis would be open to any of the large truck manufacturers as it currently is. We would just be requesting that all the specialty equipment specific to winter control activities only would be directly sourced to Viking.
And I have read this, and I'm just trying to understand. So in a nutshell, the big critical, I don't mean just what's the advantage, but why is it so critical that that one provider and only that person put the snowplow on any new truck that needs the blade put on or whatever? Why is it so critical, just in a nutshell?
Through the chair. Essentially, it's from the operator's familiarity with the vehicle, as well as with our mechanics for response time on repairs and breakdowns through the winter. It enables us to have additional parts in stock at the garage, so when there are issues that come up, we can quickly and effectively respond to those.
One last question. I'm sorry to belabor this. Just want to be comfortable if I vote for this. So certainly the statistics in the report, Mr. Chair, is that 93% of all alterations for winter control are done by one company. And it's being suggested this council, and the rationale is here, no doubt, that the mechanics, the stocking of parts would be easier if it's all through the same company or if it's the same parts that this company provides. What happens in 5 years, through you to Jason? What do we do in 5 years? I feel like if we do it for 5 years, at the end of 5 years, a lot of the stuff we purchased in the next 5 years have exclusively this company's add-ons to them, if I can use that word. Aren't we putting ourselves in 5 years in a position where even more we have to not go to another? We're locking ourselves in forever here.
Through the chair, I definitely recognize the point that you're making and the concern that is there. Basically, the way I see it is we would be continually evaluating these systems as they go. I mean, the fact is they change all the time, and as technology increases and changes over years, we may find that there's new technology out there for application of salt and brine and all that kind of stuff. And if that changes, even partially through the 5-year period, to a point where we're comfortable that we may want to explore those options, we would definitely bring that forward as a reason to cease this agreement. We are suggesting 5 years, basically, just to give us a window of consistency of knowing. And we're continually monitoring all this stuff just to make sure that we are getting our best value for what we need.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair, and just a quick comment, and that'll be it from me. We are almost at 100% with this company now. We're trying to capture the additional 7.5%. And there's a good side to that and a bad side, if I may. And I don't want to get into debate yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Jason, I understand exactly what you're asking for. Question for you first, I guess, is Viking, are they supplying your plow harness U-bodies? I guess you're running U-bodies on all your tandems and single axles?
Through the chair, that is correct.
And who's Viking's chief competitor?
Through the chair, essentially, right now in our particular market, they haven't seemed to have a competitor. There are 4 other companies that we have found through our research through this area, the area being Ontario and Quebec are the nearest. On that note, I have been advised I can't name specific companies, but there are 4. Further to that, we do have 2 from another company and 1 other unit from a third company, and essentially the Viking product has outperformed both of those, which is another reason why we are coming to you asking to let's continue this relationship with Viking and lock it down.
Yeah. What's, like, I assume when you buy a tandem today, you're buying it with, like, plow, harness, box, the whole 9 yards. Are they all remote control for sanding inside the cab and everything?
Through the chair, all of these units, when they come, are also being stocked with our Force America operating system for the application of the road sand, salt, and brine. And that is something that has been previously approved by this council to standardize that system.
Okay, and, well, I don't, as much as I agree with what you're trying to accomplish, I still believe in when you put out a tender for this type of thing, you can cab and chassis, and you can still ask for alternative plows, harness, box from different suppliers, and then council can choose. You keep Viking honest that way. I run into the same problem over the years many times where you get tied down with one unit, and there's no secret to it. They know they're going to sell their unit to your truck, and it's really not a fair system, even though there's a lot of benefits to it. If you still call it with the option of council or staff deciding what plow, harness, and box they want on that truck, they can do that. And you can still, even though it may be a higher bid at the time or somewhat higher, I guess, if you want to say, than a competitor, you can still pick that unit if we think it's going to be to our benefit for interchanging the plow or interchanging the harness or whatever it may be, or the box for that matter. But just to get tied down for 5 years or tied down period, once they know that you're going to use their equipment, well, price is no object to them. Thank you.
Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions for Jason, and I gave staff a little bit of a heads up on a couple of them. Jason, partly my first question has been somewhat answered. Over the last 5 years, how many other suppliers of this equipment besides Viking have been part of bids on any of our business?
Through the chair, I cannot tell you exactly the number of exact bids that have been submitted, but I can tell you that in the past 5 years, 2 units have been awarded to another manufacturer.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And I gather none of those are Norfolk County businesses.
Through the chair, no, none of these businesses are located within Norfolk County.
That's too bad, but I'm not surprised. I guess it's pretty specialized equipment, of course. What about the warranty? If council does approve this sole sourcing, Do you know the details of the warranty and in-service service that they provide such that it is going to be satisfactory?
Through the chair, currently when we buy any of these units, they do come with a standard one-year warranty from the manufacturer. That will remain unchanged. All the other warranties on items that are currently specified within our tenders will also remain unchanged. As for service requirements from them, the one thing we have found with this particular manufacturer is that we have not had to call on warranty items. We have not, even in the past 3 years that I'm aware of, had to send anything back there for additional service. Another advantage of these particular units is the staff at the fleet garage here in the county are very competent and capable of doing a lot of the repairs and required maintenance on these units themselves, which is one of the other reasons we wanted to go that route.
Councillor Columbus, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason, there's a local gentleman, Les Kovacs from Wyndham Center, who represents a company. He travels all over North America, and perhaps you've met with him, I don't know. Is this the type of equipment that he sells, do you know? Perhaps Bill's met him, I think.
Through the chair, personally, I've never met him. I was unaware, but Mr. Cridland is telling me that this is not the kind of stuff that he deals with.
This is not the kind of stuff. Okay, well, he said it was for Winter Works program, so thanks, Bill.
Councillor Sonnenberg.
Chair, it's been my experience on the farm for 50 years that machinery usually breaks down when you're using it. So I can see a snowplow breaking down during a blizzard. You don't want to be running all over the county looking for the right parts bin. If you had standard replacement parts accessible everywhere for the same equipment, it just gets the machine back on the road quicker. If you check out most farmers, they all have the same line of equipment, be it John Deere, International, Ford, whatever, because then you have one kind of oil. You have one kind of hydraulic fluid. You have one kind of hose ends for your hydraulic rams. You have one set of filters. Everything fits everything. If you had 3 or 4 different kinds, you have to keep that many more replacement parts on hand. You don't know where they are. What's being proposed here is a standardizing of the repair of the equipment. And I think that's a big issue when you're trying to keep stuff on the road. And I'm going to move the recommendation in the report.
Thank you. Just before I put that question on the floor, Councillor Height had a question first, and then I'll put the motion on the floor. Councillor Height, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Godby. I don't see a dollar sign here. What's the price tag on this over 5 years?
Through the chair to Councillor Height, I unfortunately can't give you a definitive dollar tag on that. One of the things that we intend to do after, should this idea be supported, would be to sit down specifically with Viking to go over those fine details on exactly what that makes up for each vehicle. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, it all comes down to the approval of the build and replacement of these units as it comes through in the capital budget.
Okay, and how many of these trucks and with all the equipment are in for the next 5 years of budget?
Through the chair, I don't have off the top of my head the exact number of the 5 years. I know for sure there's 2 coming up in 2018. I believe we take a reprieve for a year, and I think there's another couple 2 to 3 years out, but I can get you that exact number from the capital forecast if you wish.
Before I vote on this? Probably not, right? I'm struggling here, Mr. Godby. Over these next 5 years, I assume we're not going to have any contractors bid on our snow removal equipment either because we're tying up the business for the next 5 years. Is that correct?
Through the chair, I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. With regards to the contractors, This is just for replacement of existing Norfolk County owned and operated snowplow equipment. So it should have no effect on what requirements we have for contracted services for that.
It does if we eliminate 10 trucks right now and send them out to contractors is where I'm going. That would definitely have some financial implications into buying these trucks. Now, with the trucks, obviously these guys are not GM, Ford, or Dodge. They don't build their own trucks, but they'll go out and they'll buy a cab and a chassis and put their equipment on it. So you feel that you can get a better deal from that cab and chassis from these guys than what Norfolk County gets with their buying power?
Through the chair, currently just for some clarification, it's actually the cab and chassis manufacturers are the ones who do bid on the replacement of our units. And as part of that, they hire the subcontractor to build what we want for a winter control package on that based on our tender specifications. And it has just worked out that 37 out of 40 of the units that we have ever tendered for are being built by this particular company.
So then the manufacturer of the truck subcontracts to these guys to put the equipment on their trucks?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct.
So we'll also sole source out that contract for the trucks and run all GMCs per se?
Through the chair, that is not at all the intention. We would still be issuing a tender for a cab and chassis because when it comes down to it, with no offense to any truck lovers out there, a truck is a truck is a truck. So of the four big manufacturers that typically bid on this, we are satisfied with any one of those four cab and chassis. It's just this specialized equipment that we bolt onto it that we want to see some standardization of.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Brunton?
Is the motion on the table?
Yes, I believe there was one that was
there?
Councillor Sonnenberg. I
Okay.
don't have a seconder, however.
Oh, well, I like to, excuse me, sorry. I was going to speak to the motion,
Okay,
but
Councillor Black, you have seconded the motion. We have a motion on the floor moved by Councillor Sonnenberg, seconded by Councillor Black. Motion is ready for discussion.
okay, I will not be supporting the motion to go on a 5-year contract, and my reason is very simple. You can accomplish the same thing if council wishes to buy from Viking, but you do not guarantee them the job. Why would you tell them for the next 5 years, we're going to buy your product? You can call a cab and chassis and you can ask for alternatives for mounting all the hardware you want from different suppliers and make a decision. You don't have to tie it down. You will keep Viking honest that way. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Height?
I'm not supporting it either, Mr. Chair. There's no price tag on this. You're basically giving a vendor carte blanche for the next 5 years here, gouge our eyes out, and we love your equipment. So we're going to pay triple because we love you. I'll pass on that. Thank you.
You're not a very loving person here. Any further comment? Councillor Oliver.
Mr. Chair, I wasn't going to bother making this comment, but I think given what Jason has reported to us, that 32 out of the last 35 or whatever have been Viking pieces of equipment without giving them exclusive access, I guess I'm struggling to see why we're doing it now when it has the perception of giving someone an unfair advantage to supply equipment. If it's the best and if it's been competitively bid in the past, I see no reason that will change. So I'm afraid I too will not be supporting the motion.
Councillor Sonnenberg.
If there are 4 different companies out there that supply bolt-on equipment for snow plowing, why would you want a stockpile of 4 different kinds of parts scattered throughout our county? One supplier, one set of parts that fits all. Makes a whole lot of sense to me. Thank you.
Further? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion that is on the floor? I see 2. Those opposed? The motion is defeated. Where do we go from here? Mayor Luke.
Move that we receive this report as information.
Seconded by Councillor Height. All in favor? Motion is carried. That brings us to our next item, which is, I think, the Connecting Links program intake. Who will be doing that?
Mr. Chair, that'll be myself.
Well, you have the floor.
Thank you.